Hey there, I'm Jill Fenton, and I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me today. I've always been fascinated by superheroes, and not just for the cool costumes and the epic battles, but for what they teach us about human potential. And that's exactly why we're diving into this with this podcast series. In today's world, the traditional approaches to developing high performing teams, they're just not up to the challenge. And that's because so often they treat team members like interchangeable parts, when in reality, we're all unique individuals. Each of us brings their own set of gifts and limitations. But here's the thing, our differences aren't weaknesses, they're actually our collective superpower. Over these next three podcasts, we're going to explore how superhero frameworks can completely transform how teams work together. We'll unpack the elements that can transform your good teams into extraordinary ones. So grab your cape, if you have one, and let's discover the superhero framework that's about to change how you see teamwork forever. We're operating in what we call a VUCA environment, and VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Now, this concept initially came from the US Army War College in the 1990s. And incredibly, it's still relevant today, and especially in biopharma, where I specialize. In my daily work, VUCA shows up through those shifting client needs and the stakeholders who all want different things, and they all want it now. And that pressure to stay current while everything around you is changing. Does that sound familiar in your world? I'm not surprised. That's why we're tackling two critical missions in these podcasts. The first one is we're going to get really strategic about how we navigate this VUCA landscape. And then we're going to discover, how do we activate our unique superpowers to take meaningful action? We're working in a high stakes environment all the time, and that demands flawless execution. It's a lot of pressure, right? But it's not impossible. And that, my friends, is why we need to think like superheroes. So here's our solution, the superhero framework for team development. And it's simple. We recognize individual differences and use them to benefit the whole team. Today's environment demands adaptable teams, right? We have to have teams that innovate. We have to have teams that use their diverse capabilities. So recognizing that each team member brings unique skills and perspectives, just like the Avengers, right? What does this framework actually do? It does four things. It helps uncover each person's origin story. It identifies individual superpowers. It transforms individual limitations into team strengths. And it builds lasting collaborative power. In our upcoming podcasts, I'll break down each of these components in detail. We'll explore origin stories in the first episode, superpowers and limitations in the second, and finally, in the third, collaborative team power. Consider this your roadmap to transforming how your team operates in our VUCA world. Let's talk about origin stories. They are fundamental to both superheroes and high-performing teams. Every superhero has an origin story that shapes their powers and their purpose. And guess what? Every professional has one too. You do, I do. We all carry experiences that influence how we solve problems, how we communicate, and how we face challenges. We're going to explore how understanding these stories transforms team dynamics. When team members share their journeys, connection happens at a deeper level. I mentioned that our origin stories shape both our heroes and our teams. So let's look at Superman. He's perfect for understanding how our stories shape our contributions. As Clark Kent, he brings analytical thinking and emotional intelligence. But as Superman, he has extraordinary abilities. But his limitation, kryptonite, it actually serves a purpose. It forces creative thinking, problem solving, and teamwork for Superman. And this is exactly how high performing teams work. Each person brings their own superpowers, their unique skills, their experiences, but they also bring their limitations. And here's the key. These aren't weaknesses to fix. They're opportunities for collaboration. When team members share both strengths and limitations openly in a psychologically safe environment, something remarkable happens. The team becomes stronger together than any individual alone. It's not about being perfect, folks. It's about being perfectly complementary. In our second podcast, we're going to dive deeper into identifying just what those superpowers and limitations are in our teams. And we're going to use my team as an example. You'll learn practical strategies to map these qualities and how to use them to overcome your biggest challenges. That's the power of embracing our full stories, the good and the bad, both the superpowers and the kryptonite moments. Now, let's talk about breaking free from what I call the performance trap. When work piles up, development always gets pushed aside. Teams hit 3 critical roadblocks: the urgency trap, the perfectionism problem, and the resource reality. But here's the thing. You can be intentional about developing yourself and your team, even when you're swamped. This is what makes teams truly transform. In our third podcast, we're going to tackle these barriers head on. You'll learn practical strategies to keep growing even under intense pressure. Because real superheroes don't just save the day, they keep on evolving. So now your team is performing better. Woohoo, right? But how do you make these changes stick? This is where our legacy system comes in. It combines hero councils, power-up sessions, and legacy metrics to create sustainable excellence. In our third podcast, I'll show you exactly how to implement this system to transform temporary wins into lasting strengths. In this podcast, I've outlined the key components of the superhero framework. In our next one, we'll dive deeper into a whole new way of thinking about how teams can work together. And if you're interested and want more information, click below and download our paper on the superhero framework. Or you can reach out directly to Salience Learning if you want to discuss it in more detail. You've got this, super friends. See you next time.